for AT&T. I started at the bottom, not in the middle or the top, but at the bottom. But over the first 10 years, I had a lot of opportunities. And for somebody who was willing to work hard, you could go places, you could get ahead. I think about my oldest daughter, who's worked hard. She's smart, she's made good decisions, and she's a hard worker. And what are her economic opportunities? How difficult is it going to be for her to find a job that's commensurate with her skills and her experience and her education? She won't have one the day after college the way I did. It'll probably take her 3 months, 6 months, 9, maybe 12 to find a job commensurate for her skills and ability. And then what will the first decade of her career look like? Well, I can tell you, if things don't change, it's going to be a lot more difficult to move forward than it has been for me and for people of my generation. So I'm concerned about our kids and our grandkids. I'm also concerned about my youngest, my first grader. The state of California is such a devastating education here in the state of California. And I just wonder how long will my child be able to get a good education in the public school that she's in. So for those reasons and many more, that's why I'm running to represent you in Congress. I think you'll hear a lot more from me tonight, but let's hear what your questions are so I can specifically address your concerns.
Thank you, Gary. We are going to begin the interactive part of this forum. And again, if you have a question for Gary DeLong, please simply press *3 on your phone keypad at any time. First, we have a question from Michelle. And Michelle, you are live with Gary DeLong. Please ask your question.
Gary, what are your thoughts on global warming?
I'm sorry, I cut out there. Yes, well, a couple of things. Regarding global warming, climate change. Let us first of all begin by saying that our environment is society's most vital resource. I think there's no question that human behavior does impact the environment. Climate change is influenced by both man as well as natural conditions. And in both my public life and my personal life, I've made it a priority to leave our community more sustainable. So, for example, as a member of the City Council, I've led the effort to clean up our city storm drains, which feed into our beaches, so to improve our water quality. We've improved our water quality in Alameda Bay. When I first took office, it was mostly A's and B's. Mostly B's and F's. Now we've improved it to mostly A's and B's. We've had the Colorado Lagoon, which has been a terrible recreational water quality for almost 50 years. We have restored and revitalized that. So I'm a strong believer in the environment, and I think that we should all work hard to have a more sustainable future. In my personal life, I drive a hybrid. My wife and I have had solar panels on our home for a number of years. We have a composter in the side yard. So I think that government does play a role in that. And one of the things that government can do at both a local, state, and federal level is to incentivize environmentally sustainable behavior with the goal of providing a more clean and more sustainable community than what we're handing down to the next generation. So good question, and I appreciate it.
Again, thank you very much for calling in this evening. And those of you who have just joined us, make sure you press *3 on your phone keypad at any time. And what that will do is put you in the queue so that you're able to get your questions answered by Gary DeLong live and in person. Next, Gary, we have Eric in Long Beach to ask a question. Eric, you're live on with Gary DeLong. Please go ahead with your question. Hi, Eric. You are on live with us with Gary DeLong. Please feel free to go ahead with your question.
Okay. I wanted to ask about teacher accountability and unqualified teachers in the teaching positions, because I don't think some teachers are qualified, and how would we hold the unqualified teachers accountable for their role as educators?
Yeah, thank you for that question. As I mentioned, my wife and I have 3 daughters, all of school age, so education is certainly a top priority of ours. And we've had that experience. I mean, our girls have had some outstanding teachers that, they'll remember for the rest of their lives. But candidly, we've had a couple of teachers that looked like that they retired a couple of years ago, but they were still showing up to work every day. So clearly there's room for improvement in the educational system. However, I'll tell you, the number one problem facing our school system today, in my opinion, is lack of funding. My opponent, Alan Lowenthal, State University system over 30% in the last 2 years. Similar cuts to the UC system. Over 20% of our community college system. Devastating cuts to K-12 education. So while yes, we can improve the model of education, you have to fund public education. If you don't fund it, you're not going to get good results. So today, it is more difficult to get into Cal State Long Beach and the rest of the Cal State University system because due to lack of funding, the spaces just aren't available. It is more expensive to get that public education today than it's ever been before because they've raised tuition to try and balance the books. And you simply can't graduate in 4 years because the classes aren't available. So you can't get to college in 4 years. And we've done a real disservice to our kids and our grandkids by those draconian budget cuts the last 2 or 3 years. And I can just tell you that education is a much higher priority for me than it is for my opponent.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Again, I'd like to, as folks are calling in, remind you that if you press star 3 on your phone keypad, you're going to be able to make a comment, ask a question, and join in the conversation, and we'll make sure that we get you in line. So that is star 3 on your phone keypad. Next, Gary, we are going to Candace. And Candace, please go ahead with your question for Gary DeLong.
Hi, my question was, I attend college right now, and the cost keeps going up, and we have a lot of students that are in our colleges that are non-American, but they're receiving financial aid, grants, and scholarships. How do you feel about that?
Okay, well, a couple of things. First of all, I am a strong supporter of public education, and I do think the federal government has a role to play. I think the Pew Grants program is an example. It gives kids an opportunity to go to college that they would not be able to afford on their own. So I do think the federal government has a role to play in education. In regards to the cost, it hasn't gotten too expensive. And one of the reasons, again, is due to the draconian budget cuts in the state legislature. They're making college more and more expensive. I can tell you specifically on the federal level that I would oppose any increases in the interest rates for those kids that have taken out student loans. And now, in the terrible economy, so they're struggling to pay these loans back. The last thing that I would support is increasing the interest rates on these loans, which has been proposed the last couple of years. So I would be opposed to that. So, by violence, we just need to do more public funding of education to keep the costs down for our youth. And if we don't do that, then the consequences on society as a whole are going to be very negative if we can't provide the ability for our kids to get educated. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. Next, we go with Marty from Long Beach. And Marty, you are on live with Gary DeLong. Please go ahead and ask your question.
Yes, I wanted to know what your views are on Social Security, keeping Social Security available for people that live on Social Security.
Sure. Well, that's an excellent question, and I sense by your voice that you have some concerns. Well, a couple of things. First of all, I want you to know I'm a strong supporter of Social Security. I don't think we should make any changes to those citizens like you that are currently taking advantage of it. We need to keep those programs intact for you. I think we probably need to keep them intact for folks that are 55 and older, the next generation that are retiring. But I'll also say that we need to make changes for younger folks. I'm 52 years old from my category. The existing Social Security system is unsustainable. And what that means is it's going to go broke if we don't fix it. We can't continue this pace. So again, I want to be clear. I want to protect the existing system for those retirees currently taking advantage of it. But if you're under 55, we need to work together. And by that, I mean Republicans and Democrats. It's not a Republican solution or a Democrat solution. Republicans and Democrats need to work together, and they need to come out with a more sustainable Social Security for the future. Thank you.
Thank you again, Marty, very much for your question. We appreciate everybody's interest in asking questions, and we're doing our best to get as many of you as possible in line for the questions. Again, if you have indicated your desire to ask a question by pressing star 3, please hold on, and we will get with you momentarily. Next, we have Mike from Long Beach, and Mike, you are on live with Gary DeLong. Would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, very simply, if Grover Norquist demands you sign the no tax increase pledge, what will your reaction be? He, as you know, threatens to vigorously oppose anybody that doesn't go along with his plan.
Okay, well, I might disappoint you with this answer. It's allegiance and the oath of office. And I think that's what I owe to you right in the district. I work for you. I don't work for Grover Norquist. So even though you might like what he stands for, maybe you don't, but either way, I work for you. I don't work for him. So I'm not going to sign any pledge, like I said, other than the oath of office and the pledge of allegiance, because I work for you, not for anyone else.
Thank you again for your question, Mike. Please make sure you press star 3 on your touch pad just to make sure that you can get in line and ask your next question for Gary DeLong. Next, we go to Debbie. Debbie, you are live with Gary DeLong, and would you please go ahead and ask your question? Thank you so much.
Hi, I wanted to know how you would handle the obvious partisanship that we're seeing in Washington, and what would you do in order to help with that situation?
Thank you. That's another great question. I think that restoring our economy and engaging economic growth is our number one problem in our country. Very closely behind that is the gridlock. The gridlock is preventing anything from happening, whether it's trying to fix Social Security and Medicare, it's trying to get the economy growing again, it's making appropriate changes to our healthcare system. Nothing is getting done. And it's both parties' fault. I mean, I'm a registered Republican, but it's both parties' fault. Because anytime one party tries to do something, the other party tries to cut their legs off. And, I get asked this question quite a bit from folks, and I'm a very moderate Republican. I'm fiscally conservative, but socially very moderate. And the best answer I can give you is one is I will work with anyone. And I'll tell you about my recent city council experience that a comment was made to me by one of my colleagues a year or so ago. And again, it wasn't meant as a compliment. She in an evening was very frustrated with something. She said, I don't understand it. You're the only Republican. There's 8 Democrats on the council. The mayor's a Democrat, and you always get what you want. Well, first of all, none of us always get what they want, not in our personal lives or our professional lives. But what she was alluding to is she didn't know it. I'll work with anyone. So I'm going to work with the person on my right, the person on my left. I'll work with the mayor to figure out what his priorities are. I'm going to work together. And sometimes I get half of what I want. Sometimes I like it 2/3. But if you can't collaborate and compromise, then you end up with zero. And I'll give you one other specific example from a federal perspective. Was the budget. The president put forward a budget and didn't get a single vote from a Democrat or a Republican. And then the House of Representatives passed the budget, and it was a partisan budget. It was passed by the Republican Party. And whether you agree with everything in there or not, I think the number one problem with that budget is the fact that it wasn't bipartisan. It didn't have any Democrat support. So to me, a partisan budget or a partisan bill is dead on arrival because the Senate is not going to move it forward if you haven't shown an ability to compromise and collaborate. Now, from a policy perspective, when I was in Washington a few weeks ago and I met with the No Labels group, I came across just extremely motivated by them. They have a legislation they're putting forward. It's called No Budget, No Pay. And what that means basically is the number one responsibility of the legislators to pass a budget. So if you don't pass a budget, you shouldn't get paid. Because, right, the rest of us in our private lives, if we don't do our jobs, we're not going to get paid because we're not going to be able to hold on to that job. But what was wonderful about it is they already have 92 members of Congress, Republicans and Democrats. They have 92 members of Congress that have signed on to be supporting that legislation. No Labels is putting together what they call their problem-solving block. And again, it doesn't matter what your label is. Leave it at the door. But your person wants to come in and solve problems. So I already have a group of Democrats and Republicans that I'm going to connect with immediately and say, hey, you're a part of this group. I'd like to be part of the problem-solving group. I'll work with anybody to move our country forward. So I'm actually very optimistic that we're going to get things done. As long as you approach it from a nonpartisan manner, what we want is what's best for the American people. We might have some different ideas of what that is, but we're going to work together and figure it out. So thank you for that question.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I'd like to add in this evening that we have over 7,000 people who have called into this program. So we'll get to everybody as quickly as we can, and your participation is greatly appreciated. We have folks in line right now, and again, press star 3 on your keypad if you'd like to get in line and ask Gary a question live on here. Next, we have Joel from Cyprus to ask the next question. Please go ahead with your question, Joel.
Yeah, Gary, can you comment on how you would help boost the economy, especially here?
Yeah, if we're 40,000 people online, I'm going to try and do it in shorter answers. 10 years ago, when Governor George Major was governor of California, he tells a story that when he assumed office, he put together this committee and they looked at 50,000 regulations. Some of the regulations were perfect. They didn't change
have right now with so many people without a job. I mean, what can you do? And they're all on welfare, and I totally don't like that at all. You work for what you have.
You do, but the problem is, as I mentioned in my own remarks, we're finding ourselves with a lack of opportunity in our country today. People do not have the same opportunities today that we did 10 years ago, and we can't guarantee everybody the same outcome, nor should we. But we do want to give people an opportunity to move forward in our country. We need to get our economy growing again, and if we can do that, who benefits? Everyone benefits. If you're unemployed, you have an opportunity to get a job. If you're underemployed, you have an opportunity to get a better job. If you're stuck mid-career, you're not going anywhere, but now your business is growing and expanding, opening new offices, you've got an opportunity to compete for that better job. And if you're at the top of the food chain and the business is growing and expanding, you're going to do better as well. And also government will, because if we get that private sector growing again, then state, local, federal government, they're all going to get a piece of that revenue, so government's going to get fully funded. That's what we need to do to get ourselves out of the situation we're currently in.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Again, we have many people in line to ask their questions, so please press *3 and make sure you get in line to ask your question, and we'll be with you shortly. Next, we go to Greg from Signal Hill, and Greg, please go ahead with your question for Gary DeLong.
All right, thank you. Hi, Gary. Greg here. It was a pleasure to meet you this weekend at your barbecue. It was very nice. You had a beautiful day. So I've got a question for you, Gary, that's been asked of our presidential candidates. So I think it's very important that we know who you are versus who you are as how your opponent is trying to portray you to be. So the question is, what's the biggest misperception your opponent is using against you?
Well, first of all, thank you for coming to the barbecue. It was 4 hours. We had over 200 people that came and just had a wonderful time. But the biggest misconception, when I've always said the key to victory here is I need to prevent my opponent from redefining me and turning me into somebody I'm not, which gets to your question. And then we got to make sure that he isn't trying to redefine himself as somebody he's not. Here's who I am. I am, as I mentioned, I'm a fiscally conservative, socially moderate, registered Republican. I'm right in the middle of the political spectrum. And if you look at the makeup of the 47th district between Democrats, Republicans, and Independents, and declining state, that's what this district is. It's a very, very moderate district. Not saying we don't have people at both ends of the political spectrum. We certainly should respect their points of view. But in general, this is a moderate seat. My opponent, who's a very liberal Democrat, I don't say that in any negative fashion, just for 20 years he's been proud to be at the very far end of the left of the political spectrum. That's who he is. Now he's trying to say he's a moderate pro-business Democrat. That's just ridiculous. He's not. Now on the other hand, he's trying to define me as being this far right off the edge Republican, and that's just crazy. I mean, that's not who I am. That's never been my legislative record. That's not who I am as a person in my personal life. I'm a very moderate Republican. In fact, for some Republicans, I'm too moderate. And for some Democrats, I might not be moderate enough, but I am in the middle. So that's the number one thing that I would say my opponent is trying to do is mischaracterize, send out mailers. There's one yesterday, vote for DeLong and vote for Speaker John Boehner. That's crazy. I mean, I'm going to work with everybody, regardless of the Speaker of the House is, whether it's a different Republican or it's a Democrat. I'm going to work with anybody to move our country forward.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Next, we have Libby of Signal Hill, who has a question for you, Gary. Libby from Signal Hill, if you would please go ahead and ask Gary your question.
Hi, Gary. Thanks for taking my call. I love this idea. It's great to have everybody on the phone all at once. I wanted to know, when you get to Washington, D.C., what subcommittee are you hoping to get on, and how do you think that will help us back in Long Beach?
Great. Well, there's a couple. My number one preference is the Transportation Committee. The Long Beach, as well as just this region, to the ports of Long Beach, Port of Los Angeles, we're a good movement industry. So I would like to be on the Transportation Committee because that's where they make all the decisions regarding those industries. I would like to be on Energy and Water. Those committees are very important to the 47th Congressional District. And then from a personal perspective, I'd love to be on the Budget Committee. Now, I government works and where the opportunities for improvement are, you have to get into the weeds with the numbers. And I've been able to do it in the city of Long Beach, and that's why I've been successful in balancing the budget and trimming in the right places and protecting core services, is because I understand how the funding works. I don't understand that candidly today in Washington, but I will figure it out quickly if I'm on the budget committee. One thing a year, they'll take me a month or two. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Again, for those of you that are just joining us, you are live with Gary DeLong this afternoon, and if you press *3 on your keypad, we will put you in line to make sure that you're able to ask Gary a question. And for those of you that are still in line to ask your question, please hang on, because we're getting to many folks as possible. We have over 7,200 people on the line tonight, and lots of good questions to get to. So next we go to Jerry of Long Beach. And Jerry, you're on live with Gary DeLong. Go ahead and ask your question.
Yes, if you're really concerned about jobs, why haven't you passed any jobs bills that the president presented?
Well, I know that I actually one of the bills that he brought forward, the American Jobs Act. My concern would be that it generates more deficit. There's this tremendous cost. It's more like a stimulus fund. So while I do support creating more jobs, as I mentioned earlier, I want to see those jobs created in the private sector. If you go to long-term jobs, it holds last forever. With stimulus type funding, they're one-time, shots to the economy. It helps you for a period of months, but then the next year, you're really not any better off than you were before, and now you've accumulated potentially hundreds of millions of more debt that our kids are going to have to pay back. So I do support moving forward and creating jobs, but I'd be very concerned about creating any public debt in order to put those jobs out there. Now, I will tell you that we do need to work together. So the House has shot down the President's Job Act, but on the other hand, the House has passed numerous pieces of job-creating legislation, and the Senate has refused to take them up. Our process is broken. We should be looking at the President's Job Act and saying, okay, well, don't say that everything is bad. I mean, come on, some of it's got to be good. Why can't we look at what pieces of it that could be supported by the House and the Senate? Take those pieces and say, well, Mr. President, you're probably not going to get everything you want, but we're going to give you X%, and we fully agree with you here. Same thing, the bills that we're working on the House and are made on the House, I like the Senate to look at those, go to Congress committees, and we don't agree with everything you've put forward, but here's some pieces that we can agree with, so we're going to support you here. We need more of that. We need to stop this yes, no. If we don't like everything about your bill, we're just going to vote no. That's craziness, and none of us are well served when that happens, so we need to figure out how to work together better.
Great, thank you very much. And for those of you on the line, please make sure that you press *3 on your keypad to make sure that you get in line to ask Gary DeLong a question. Next in line, we have Evelyn from Long Beach. And Evelyn, please go ahead with your question.
Yeah, my question, Gary, is one of my neighbors said that she was required by her company to train people to take over her job that moved to Long Beach, and they gave her job that she had in Long Beach for people who got a very meager amount of money to do the work. And how can we have growth in our country when we support taking jobs out, because they have lots and lots of people who would work for very little money in other countries? And what can we do about that to turn that scenario around? Because that's a tremendous problem in a lot of places. And what can we do as a people in this country and I understand, what you said, we got to keep the jobs here, we got to create business, and we got to treat, but business go, where they can make money and for profit. And so if they make more money, when people can work for a little of nothing, vis-a-vis the people who here, need livable wages, because it's not possible to live off $1 an hour if you live in Long Beach.
You got that right. Well, thank you for the question, Evelyn. I recognize your voice, so thank you very much for calling in. I appreciate that. Well, a couple of things. It's a great question because it really goes to the heart of policy, right? What's wrong or what could be tweaked with our government policies in order to keep these jobs in the United States? And I'll give you an example. A couple of years ago, when AT&T and T-Mobile were looking at merging their companies, and the FCC was looking at that, and one of the things that FCC had asked for was with AT&T California and going to Arizona or going to Texas? Or why are you leaving the United States and going to India? Why are you taking your manufacturing to China? And again, part of it could be, cheap labor, but I think there's a lot of other reasons as well. And I would like to be able to work with business people, work with small business owners or corporate executives and everybody in between and say, how do we create a more hospitable business environment so that you will keep your company and grow here in the United States? And I'll also tell you, if we don't do that, then as we move all our manufacturing offshore, there's a book recently it talked about how that's where all of the future inventions are going to come from. It's not coming from Bell Lab, it's coming from workers that are on the assembly line that are thinking of creative ways to do things differently. And if all those creative ideas are being generated outside the United States, that's going to be a real problem for us later on. So I think it's a great question, and we need to fix that, or we're going to have some long-term problems.
Thank you very much for that question. Now, one of the things we have this evening is we have a format that allows us to be able to poll our audience directly. For those of you that don't want to ask a question live, we will have an interactive poll that you'll be able to interact with directly from your keypad. Now, for those of you in line asking a question, please stay on the line. But at the same time, we're going to allow you to share your concerns directly with Gary DeLong and the poll. Our first poll this evening is a question to all of you online. Do you believe partisan gridlock in Washington is one of the primary reasons our country is heading in the wrong direction? Press 1 for yes, it is a serious problem. Press 2 for no, it's not any worse than it typically is. Or press 3 for undecided, don't know. Again, this is an instant poll we're taking on your phone line right there, and I'll ask the question real quick again. Do you believe partisan gridlock in Washington is one of the primary reasons our country is headed in the wrong direction? 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 for undecided, and don't know. And at the same time, what we're going to be able to do is follow up quickly after a couple of questions, and we will let you know what the instantaneous poll results are right away. And while we're waiting for those poll results, please press star 3 on your keypad to get yourself into the queue to line up to have a live question with Gary DeLong. And going next, we have Rick in Long Beach that is next in line to ask a question for Gary DeLong. Rick, please go ahead and ask your question.
Mr. Lord, thank you for this opportunity and been listening intently and have high hopes for you in Washington. I believe California is lost to the environmental and chasing businesses out of California due to excessive electricity and compliance rules. What I need from you is to get America working. There's too many people suffering, okay? Jobs are leaving, like you mentioned, okay? And I want to know your position on energy policies and what you're going to push. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. First of all, there's a reason that I'm not running for state office, and one of those reasons are it's just broken. It's completely broken in Sacramento. I just don't know how anybody can get anything done. I actually am far more optimistic about the federal level in Washington than I am in Sacramento. They just don't get it up there. I do think all of us, or at least the vast majority of us, do want an appropriate amount of regulation. I like to think that the vast majority of us do believe that we want to move our state forward environmentally. We take a certain amount of pride in being a leader in that. But there's a few of us that want to take it further than that. It is negatively impacting our economy. And I guess what I would promise you is I would bring some balance. I am supportive of environmental issues, so I want to be clear about that. But you got to look at it and say, is the benefit worth the cost? So if we're going to put in this new environmental regulation, what's the negative impact on our economy? Now, it might just be a slight impact, so it's fine to go forward. Let's do it. It'll make California, a better state for the next generation. But it might have a horrific impact on the economy. And then you can say, well, this is not now the time to make things even more and more and more difficult for the private sector. But I think the message I would want to leave you with is it's all about balance. I think we've become unbalanced in the state of California, and that's one of the reasons why our unemployment rate is higher than the national average, and it's killing us. So we do need to change. I'll give you a couple examples. Currently, thanks to our state legislature, in which my opponents been part for 14 years, we have the highest sales tax in the nation. We have the second highest gas tax. We have the third highest income tax. We have the third worst unemployment rate. We have the third worst tax plan. We have the third highest foreclosure rate. The 10th highest property tax. I can go on, but these things are not coincidences. We have shot ourselves in the foot, and
have Eric who would like to ask a question. Eric, please go ahead with your question.
Hello, my name is Eric. I'm currently a college student, and I want to know what you're planning to do in Congress about the gas prices.
Well, a couple of things. First of all, as I just mentioned, California has one of the highest gas taxes in the country. So from a local perspective, we should bring that gas tax down. That's making our gas more expensive to the consumer than most of the other states in the country. At the federal level, I think we need to reduce our dependence on foreign oil. It's killing us for a number of reasons. One is it makes us subject to the vagaries of pricing. So if OPEC and others decide they want to raise the price, there's not a lot we can do about it other than pay at the pump. It causes us national security issues where all of a sudden we might be involved in different parts of the world that frankly we shouldn't be involved in, but we feel a need to protect the oil. I think that's bad policy for our country and our citizens. So those are the two things I would do. Is I would look at bringing the gas tax to an appropriate national average, and I would make every effort I could to reduce our dependence on foreign oil. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Now we'll go to our polling results, and it looks as though most of you have weighed in on the question. Again, the question was, do you believe partisan gridlock in Washington is one of the primary reasons for our country heading in the wrong direction? Now, over 59% of you said yes, partisan gridlock is a problem. 8% of you said no, it's no worse than it typically is. 23% said undecided or don't know. Now, that is definitely an overwhelming opinion that gridlock is a problem for the United States. So let's go to our next question. Again, press star 3 if you'd like to get in the queue and ask a question live for Gary DeLong. Next, we go to Christopher of Westminster. And Christopher, I'd like to say you are on live with Gary DeLong this evening. Please go ahead with your question.
Hello, Mr. DeLong.
What do you think?
In view of the concept that parents and local authorities should be the first in line in terms of education policies, etc., assuming you accept this, what is your general policy to education, and how do you hope to help improve education for America's children?
Okay, well, first of all, I think that we should localize education policy. I think that local school boards have a much better understanding of the needs of their community than bureaucrats from Washington. So I look at it as a parent, I'm happy to pay a certain portion of my tax dollars to go to education, but my kids are taking advantage of it. But I'm not thrilled with the amount that goes to the government bureaucracy. I'm less thrilled with the amount that gets taken by the state bureaucracy. And then you look at every dollar we invest in education, a very small percentage of that dollar ends up in the classroom with the teacher and with our kids and grandkids. So that's one thing that needs to change, is we need to make sure more of our taxes goes where it can do the most good. I'd also like to see more of the decision making. They have budgets, but then the state and the federal government are telling the local school districts how to spend that money. And that's one of the things I hear from superintendents. They say, look, if we could just have more flexibility on how we spend the dollars, we could do a much better job educating our youth. So I do believe in localizing education decisions.
Excellent. We're going to make sure that everybody has a chance to ask their question, and we still have some time left this evening, so push star 3 on your keypad to make sure that you get in line to ask Gary a question. Next on our queue, we have Brenda. Brenda, you are on live this evening. Would you like to go ahead and ask your question, please?
Hello. My question is that if we make colleges more affordable, which will be nice, how can they afford to live here in California when the rents are out just ridiculous? Our gas prices are ridiculous. The utilities are ridiculous. How can anybody come here? How can the students come here and afford to go to the college?
Well, I think that's an excellent question. The cost of living, particularly here in Southern California, just continues to go up, and up. And meanwhile, the economy is doing worse and worse. I think that's it's a great question. I don't know what the solution is other than we need to get our economy growing again so that people have better jobs, they make more
ratio of taxable earnings that one pays taxes on, right?
Yes.
You're there? And this year, for 2012, it's $110,000 and $110,100, and so anything you make over that won't be taxed. But in looking this up online, I realized no wonder they're broke, because the Social Security tax for employees is 4.2 and for employers 6.2, coming to 10.4. And when I started working, it was 8% for me and 8% for my employer. So my original question was about raising the cap, because anybody that makes, say I made $150,000, there's $40,000 the government's not getting any tax from. But the rate has also gone down dramatically. So I'd like your comments on that.
Thank you. How I answer this question should give you some insight into just how I look at these complex problems in general. If I'm going to go in a room with Republicans and Democrats, et cetera, we're going to try and figure out how to fix this thing. The first thing we have to do is we have to say, what is the problem? The problem is that there is not enough funding going into the Social Security program to provide the current level of benefits. So either you have to cut the benefit or you're going to have to increase the revenue or a combination of both. You've got to see increasing revenues are at least part of the solution, if not all of the solution. Is having a means test, essentially, what that is to say, let's raise the cap. Is that appropriate for discussion? Absolutely. Do I think that will solve the problem? That if we just raise it an extra $10,000 or $20,000 a year, the problem will be solved? No, but it could be part of the solution. What else can we do? Well, should we look at increasing the retirement age? Because if you look at when Social Security was first put in place and the average lifespan of a person, well, people live much, much longer today than they did when that happened. An extra 10 or 20 years. So clearly that might need to be looked at. So there's a number of things that need to be looked at to make that problem solvable. And yes, I think the cap or a means test is certainly one of the things that should be considered as we move forward. But I will tell you, I also think it's important, if you're going to go try and fix this, is you don't walk in the room and say, look, I've got 3 ideas, my ideas are good, your ideas are bad, and I'm not budging. These are the 3 and the only 3 that I'll consider, and I need to get what I want. I think you have to say everything's on the table. Let's work together. Let's come up with the best solution. I might only agree with 60 or 70% of the solution at the end of the day, but, let's find the middle ground here and move things forward.
Great. Thank you very much. We will much appreciate everybody who's called in this evening. We've had an overwhelming response and some excellent questions as well. And it looks like this evening we have time for one more question. And I'd like to go to Michelle of Long Beach. Michelle, you are on live with Gary DeLong this evening. Would you like to please go ahead and ask your question?
Well, hi. Thanks so much for the opportunity to talk directly to Gary. This is really pretty cool. Anyhow, I'd like to know what Gary, I'd like to know what your ideas are to help a small business owner like myself.
Thank you, Michelle. Appreciate that question. Thank you for joining us this evening. During the primary, one of the programs we had is I interviewed 100 businesses in 100 days. And what I did is I met predominantly with small business owners and just asked them, what were the challenges? What's preventing them from growing their business, or from starting another business? What can we do to help? And I would tell you that overwhelmingly, the number one issue, and that is all California businesses, obviously, but the number one issue is regulation. They said it is more and more and more difficult to do business in the state of California every year. So if you're just kind of squeaking by and your margin's not very good, you're not making a ton of money, you're going to make less money next year, and it's going to be in a more difficult climate. And like at some point, we're going to be out of business. We just can't keep up. And again, that wasn't one person or 10 people. That was over 90% of the people that I met with. That was the biggest issue. More and more regulation. So I think that the state has become out of balance. If they look at regulation, it might seem like a good idea on the surface, but then when you realize what the cost is to the economy, what the impact is in that small business owner, it's not just that one regulation, because that was actually not too bad. It's the fact that they passed 9, 10, 12, 15 new rules and regulations. That's what makes it overwhelming. The same thing with taxes and fees. Is it really a lot more to pay an extra quarter percentage point, or maybe 1% more here, maybe the fee was $30 and now it's $75 or 70, it goes to 100. It doesn't seem like a big deal, but when you add them all up together, the challenges are becoming insurmountable. So I guess when you ask, what will I do to help small businesses, what I would say is that I would look at every rule, every regulation, every fee that's proposed, and I'm going to look at it and say, does this help the economy or does it hurt the economy? If it even if it's a good idea, if it hurts the economy, we need to set it aside for now, and we'll come back and revisit it later. I also think that we need to look and say, what have we done in the past? Let's give the benefit of the doubt and say it was well-intentioned, but it just didn't work out very well, or it had unintended consequences that didn't occur to anybody when they passed that rule. I think we should be talking to small business owners and saying, what can we do to help you? Or what have we done to hurt you that you'd like us to reverse course on? That, I think, is how we get out of our dilemma and how we help our local small businesses. And I'll also mention in the last decade, the vast majority of new job growth has come from small businesses, not large businesses, but small. And last year was the lowest number of small business starts that we've had in many years. We're not headed in the right direction.
Thank you very much, Gary. It looks like we are just about out of time this evening. Those of you who were not able to get in line and answer Gary's question, please press 0 at the end of this phone call this evening, and we will definitely get back to you about your question because there are lots of us on this campaign that really want to get to you and answer whatever questions you may have. So, Gary, we go to you to wrap up this evening.
Well, I just like to say thank you for everyone that called in and either listened to what your neighbors had to say or participated by asking a question. I thought it was an excellent question. I can tell you that the most enjoyable part of campaigning for office is you get the opportunity to meet a wide variety of people. And maybe I'll close with a story. I was out preaching DeLong a couple of weeks ago in Lakewood. And it was towards the end of the morning. We're walking out a couple of hours. And I walked in the fellow's driveway. I saw the sign in the window, and it said, the Democrat sign. It had the Obama sign, and it had Democrat forward, and there was another message, I think it's around on the register Republican. I said, what the heck? I'm going to knock on this person's door. I can see on my walk shoes a 39-year-old Democrat male and a 37-year-old Democrat female. What the heck? So I knock on the door, and the guy answers in a USC t-shirt, so I give him the USC fight on, sign, and I just mentioned, I said, I see that, I like your sign in the window. I've got some positive comments. I said, well, thanks, And I said, well, I'm a registered Republican that's running here in the congressional district. And he says, well, why are you here? And I said, well, I'm here because I'll bet you and I are closer on the political spectrum than you are with my opponent. He said, oh, really? I said, really? I said, well, ask me a couple of questions, and he does, and sure enough, we're 100% in line with each other. So I said, well, what would you do to get our economy moving again? I talked about that for a minute or two. I said, well, what do you think? I said, well, I think it never occurred to me when I got out of bed this morning that I'd be voting for a Republican, for Congress, but you got my vote. I thank him very much for it. I said, well, how about your side? He said, don't push it. But anyway, I thank all of you. I've got great support, obviously, from the Republican community, but even, just as important, the number of Democrats in Decline State that are supporting the campaign are overwhelming. Mayor Stanton, the Democrats endorsed the campaign. Democrat Mayor of Lakewood, Larry Van Nostrum, Democrat Mayor of Signal Hill, a number of Democrats held fundraisers. So we are trying to run a bipartisan campaign. It's an open tent. Everybody's welcome. And I'll do my very best to move our country forward for all of us. And thank you again for participating.
Thank you again very much, Gary, and thank you to everybody who was on the program this evening. Please know you can also stay on this line at the end, and you can leave a message